Hello, and welcome to the Mostly Star Wars podcast. We're excited to talk all things Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3. But first, we have our normal trifecta of hosts. We have Mostly Darth, Tyler.
Hello there.
We have Crazy Q, Quinton.
Hello, everybody.
And then we got myself, Mostly Martinez, Josiah. Also today, we have a very special guest who isn't new to the podcast scene, but's new to our channel as we are new and our very first guest. So we're very excited. He is the host of a highly acclaimed and world-renowned podcast known as All In Podcast. He's also the host of Keep Nintendo Weird podcast, and he is known for his Nintendo ramblings in all the discords and social media platforms. But we know him for his passion and love of Star Wars. It's our great honor to introduce our newest guest to the council, Jedi Master Seth. How you doing, my friend?
Oh my gosh, already getting the rank of master. I haven't earned it yet, man. I haven't earned it. I feel I'm unworthy of that intro. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We may
dude.
have to demote you.
That's fair. Yeah, I'll take instant demotion, man. That's how it works. That's how the Jedi work these days. Dude, I'm so excited to be here, man. I never get to chat Star Wars. I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing with this show. I'm honored to be the first guest. We're talking about a great movie tonight. I'm so stoked. This is where the fun begins, y'all.
Oh yeah. We're
Nice.
super excited to jump right into it. We're super honored that you decided to join us today. And so to jump right into it, since you're our first guest, how we're going to do it moving forward, all the guests that we have, we're going to ask those same questions from our pilot that we asked each other. And my good friend, Crazy Q, Quinton, is going to go ahead and do that interview for us. And we're going to happily sit quiet and watch.
There's just gonna be me and Q hanging out right now.
Yep.
Josiah, did you rehearse that intro? Because those are a lot of big words.
I was typing like as we were chatting before.
Dude, it was clean, man.
Alright,
it was
alright.
clean. I respect it. It was a great intro.
Appreciate
All
it.
right, Seth. So we'll start with the first question. What is your first Star Wars memory?
My first Star Wars memory is probably with my grandparents in Chicago watching the original trilogy on VHS. I think they had one of the box sets, those ones that came in like the gold and silver VHS box sets. And watching the original trilogy on VHS when I was very, very young. I must have been 5, 6, like optimistically, maybe younger than that. I started playing video games around that time too. So yeah, I was very, very young when I was introduced to Star Wars, and I just it was love at first sight. Like I fell head over heels in love with Star Wars. Star Wars has been with me basically my entire life.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I definitely remember those VHS box sets. Okay. On to our next question. Why do you like Star Wars?
Oh man, it's probably just like the world. Like it's like the escapism. It's the feeling of place. Like I feel like Star Wars is kind of like going home. Like I just love even like the Star Wars movies that fall on the lower spectrum. I think for me are still like it's still Star Wars. Like I just love Star Wars. I love that universe. I love getting back into it in any way I can. Like anytime I sit down, watch a new show, watch a new movie, it's like putting on an old leather jacket. It fits you just right. It feels like it was just waiting for you to come back. I feel such a deep connection to that world, and I love coming back to it.
Awesome. So we're discussing a prequel movie tonight, but I'm going to ask you what your favorite prequel is.
It's this one for sure. It's for sure this one, Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3.
Okay.
I actually, again, I like all Star Wars, and I think that as you guys were talking about last week, I think Episode 2 actually, in hindsight, like the more I watch that movie, the more I actually like it. But for the prequels, it still definitely is like 3, 1, 2 for me in the ranking. Like I Revenge of the Sith by far my favorite, and I'm sure we'll get into that in this episode.
Yeah, I think we'll get some.
I think
little
we'll
more
probably cover
information
this movie a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree. I did feel like Episode 2, watching it with this podcast in mind, definitely I saw it in a better light. but it did not change where it ranks among my
No,
favorites of the prequels.
no, me either. It's like it's actually better and it does more things right than I feel like some people give it credit for. But it's still
It's still
not
the worst
Phantom
prequel.
Menace. Yeah, totally.
All right. What is your favorite original trilogy movie?
That one is tougher for me. For a long time, I would have went with Empire, but now I think as an adult, I'd go with Return of the Jedi. Um, I think that the emotional kind of core of Return of the Jedi hits me really strongly. Um, I think that it obviously has the representation of some of my favorite Star Wars characters. Like you get to see, kind of Boba Fett doing his thing the most in the like combined 5 minutes maybe of screen time he has in the original trilogy. Um, and I love the little stuff. Like I remember being really struck by Jabba's palace and like the sail barge and stuff and all of the weird alien creatures on there. There's just like a kind of darkness to Return of the Jedi coupled with the feeling of like hope and the way that all of the plot threads crescendo at the end. I love that movie. And like I don't care. I love the Ewoks. Like I don't care what anybody says.
Right.
um I love everything about that movie, and I think as an adult that's my favorite.
Nice. Yeah, I've always said that Return of the Jedi was my favorite, and I feel like for those same reasons as an adult, it's grown to be even more so my favorite original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to a little more heated topic. What is your favorite sequel trilogy movie?
Oh man, this is gonna be heated. I'm a Last Jedi guy. I'm a Last Jedi guy. I I love the Last Jedi. We could do a whole. We could sit here. I mean, when you guys get to the Last Jedi, if you don't have another guest lined up, I'd love to come back because I could speak for hours about the Last Jedi. Like the Last Jedi might, if it weren't for like the nostalgia that I have for the original trilogy, the Last Jedi might be my favorite Star Wars movie. Like and actually that's another one that gets better in my view the more time I have to think on it. That is like the thinking man Star Wars for me. Like there's so much like fat to chew on in that movie, and there's so many things to think about whether you like it or not. Like regardless of the way you fall on the Last Jedi with some of the things that happened with Luke or whatever, the point is that it got you to think about these things, and it kind of questioned and challenged your viewpoint of Star Wars in a way that the movies and the TV shows haven't really before or since. And I really love that about The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I'm really trying real hard not to interrupt you. Because I almost think, I think you're right. The Last Jedi kind of follows... Rian Johnson, I think, understood more of what George Lucas was saying in the prequels than JJ did with either of the other two.
Yeah. He was trying to do something unique, man. Like that's the whole thing is like when I find it so funny that we got to The Force Awakens and everybody was like, oh, like everybody hates the prequels, right? Like, isn't that what's going on? Everybody hates the prequels. Okay, well, cool. Let's step back from the prequels. Literally the first spoken words of the sequel trilogy are, "This will begin to make things right." That's literally the first spoken words. And it's like, so clear that they were trying to step back from the prequel trilogy that they assumed everybody hated. And then it's like, oh wait, no, we like this weird stuff now. It's been like 20 years. We're actually cool with the prequels now. And then it's like in hindsight. And so then Rian Johnson comes in. He's like, oh, okay, so we don't want to just do like A New Hope again. Gotcha. Let's do something new. Let's kill the past, bury it, and then everybody's like, well, hang on, no, we don't want that either. So they didn't know what to do with the sequel trilogy just in general. And then Rise of Skywalker was like cleanup time, and it was kind of miraculous that Rise of Skywalker was even as good as it was, considering how much of a mess they had to clean up with the way they handled the sequel trilogy just in general. But that's my hot take.
I think they kind of didn't realize that the people who hated the prequels, well, they're older now,
right?
And the people who love them were the adults consuming the sequel trilogy now,
right? Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because I think there's a really interesting like psychological thing to pick apart with the sequel trilogy. And it was one of those things where they were trying to please everybody and they ended up pleasing nobody, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. All right, so here's our final question, and I'm gonna change it up just a tiny bit. Obviously, with Obi-Wan right around the corner, we're all extremely excited about that. So feel free
Oh,
to
yeah.
touch on that as well. But I'm gonna ask the question: besides Obi-Wan show, what Star Wars projects, upcoming projects, are you looking forward to the most?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, because I think Obi-Wan's the obvious one, right? Like Obi-Wan is everybody's excited for that.
Only
This
a
is
week
like what
away.
we've always wanted. Yeah, I mean we're so close, and it's what we've always wanted to see. You know, so that is kind of the obvious answer. It hasn't been officially announced yet, the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order, but we know that that's a thing, and it's probably coming within the next year. Um, and I'm really excited to kind of see that story continue. I don't know if you guys played Fallen Order. I loved that game. Like I
Yeah, it
had
was
such a
great.
good time with that game. That was probably like, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge KOTOR fan, but like Fallen Order is
Yeah.
probably the best single player Star Wars game just in terms of gameplay and the way it tackled the story, and it it felt like the old mid 2000s expanded universe Star Wars like that I love. And it just felt really true, like really accurate. I really love that game, and I can't wait to see a follow up to that. I know that's a weird answer because it hasn't been officially announced, but we're
you
probably
sure?
going to hear more about that this
I
year.
thought I
But
thought I saw a title. I thought
yeah,
I saw it was
pretty
the
called
sure.
title
Jedi
was leaked.
Survivor.
Yeah, it was leaked. The
Okay, I guess
Jedi
that's-
Survivor, Jeff
Okay.
Grubb leaked it.
Yeah,
But
I think we kind of all know, but yeah, we don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
it was
haven't they
it was
announced?
such.
Sorry, Quinton, I was just gonna say, haven't they announced
Okay,
that
go ahead.
it's officially getting a sequel, but
Yes.
no name or anything official? Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
I'll say it was such a success, not just commercially, but as from all the fan point of view. Of all the things that have come out since the Disney purchase, that one was received really well. So I couldn't imagine them not providing a sequel to it.
Yeah.
And it's
And
one of the it's one,
Respawn's just been on fire lately. So
oh yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
all
it's
for it.
one of those things where like EA squandered the Star Wars license for forever. Like they've had it since like 2013 or something like that, and we've had what, like 4 or 5 games total out of it, and most of them are subpar. You know, so to
Mhm.
have one that was finally good was like
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean,
and for that
Battlefront was good eventually,
yeah, Battlefront 2
But
turned
they
out really well.
Yeah, eventually,
know.
2 years later, after they tried to
Yep.
destroy it at launch.
And after the
Mhm.
player base died,
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody had
finally got
already
good.
moved on. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's a shame. And then like the exciting stuff that was happening, like Emmy Hennig's Project Ragtag and stuff, which it sounds like they're kind of gearing
I think
back
they
up
just
again.
signed a
I don't know
contract
what's
with
going
her.
on. Yeah, they have some new contract with her, and I think EA has lost the exclusive license as well. I think more people
Mhm.
are going to be allowed to make Star Wars games now, which is only a good thing.
I think
Yeah.
Ubisoft is
Yeah.
working on one as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, which is good.
and what was the
Eclipse.
Yeah, Eclipse. That's the other one I was
Right.
thinking as well.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, so that'll be nice.
That game, I don't know. The trailer was just so good, but I know
Yeah.
it's so far away that I don't want to like overthink about it because that trailer was just so good.
I think for that, I'm the most cautiously optimistic because I'm so deep down excited for it. I keep trying to reel myself back. Like it can't be as
Exactly.
good as I'm imagining it to be. So I keep on
Sure.
kind of being like, okay,
Mhm.
like just calm down, like so let's hear some more information and kind of
Yeah.
see where it goes. But yeah, I'm so excited and hyped after just that brief reveal.
Yeah.
After
All right,
after
well,
like
thank you
years
for
of
answering all
darkness,
of our
we're
questions.
finally getting some games. Of course, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
We're still new at this.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
All right, so let's talk.
It's only episode 4 talking about episode 3.
Episode
Trying to confuse
4/3.
everyone.
Episode 4 about 3. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
All right, who wants to start? Well, favorite moments, I guess, of Revenge of the Sith.
How about our guest?
Okay. Oh man, there are so many, y'all. Like
Mhm.
favorite moments. There's so many in this movie that are great. Like I love it's funny to revisit these movies in the sort of internet era, because obviously when they first came out, there was not, the meme culture wasn't what it is today. And it's funny to revisit the movies with the memes in mind and seeing things like "this is where the fun begins" and these like overplayed memes. To see them happen in the movie is just kind of funny.
Yeah,
These things that
you're
have sort
right.
of become like part of our humor and lexicon and stuff as Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
I th- I mean, yeah, like favorite moments. I mean, like there are so many, like the opera house scene, legendary. Just one of my favorite moments in any movie ever. Um, the moment between Mace Windu and Palpatine slash Sidious, the moment of the actual turn, Order 66, which like still gives me goosebumps every time I hear that song. And I mean the final battle, of course, which like still brings tears to my eyes. Like it's the stuff between Anakin and Obi-Wan. There's like so much to unpack in that movie. That's such a dense movie,
Mhm.
and a really fascinating like character study of Anakin. Like that one thing that I really like that you guys did when you guys were talking about the other prequels is kind of talking about who's the main character of these movies. Like
Mhm.
episode 3 really is Anakin's movie, you
Mhm.
Yeah.
know, and like it really felt like that was the real deep dive into his character. Of course, he's always been a main component of the prequels, but like episode 3 is when we really got to sort of get into his head in a way that I like.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree. And I was just gonna mention, since you kind of brought that up, is I think that's another reason I'm super excited for Obi-Wan. And as soon as we
Yeah,
found out about Hayden being in there, because I think exactly what you just said. I love this movie because we get to have more of a deep dive into his feelings, his emotions. We get more screen time of him. He's crying throughout the movie so much. He's angry throughout the movie so much. You can see all of these feelings and emotions. And I love the fact that we're going to get a little bit more of him before, you know, the original trilogy. We're getting a little bit more of, kind of what we already loved seeing from him.
totally.
you
And
know,
and it's funny too, because like that's what people made fun of him for back
Yeah.
when this movie was coming out, but that's what I love it for today, you
Same.
know.
Yeah.
right. So you talked about Star Wars feeling like going home, and
Mhm.
one thing I kind of thought when you watch this movie, it's the opening scene. That
Hmm.
Mhm.
opening scene when they pan to the battle over Coruscant, and that's like it just feels like Star Wars.
Yes.
It's the Battle of Endor or the Death Star battle. It felt right in line with that, and you're like, okay, this is Star Wars. Let's go.
Yeah. I feel like we probably should touch on like just even the opening, when it comes to like favorite moments, because the opening, like they
Hmm.
nailed it. And like that's one thing that, we could kind of maybe say on episode 2 that was a little bit off maybe. And they have like the elevator scene with Anakin and Obi-Wan, right? And they're kind of trying to show, everything that we end up getting in the cartoons later, right? That,
Sure.
they became brothers through the war, right? But I don't think that they quite hit it. And then the fact that, yeah, that Obi-Wan is just like dissing him any chance he gets, even behind his back to, Windu and Yoda and stuff. So I think like that didn't really come off right per se, but I think this intro was perfect. Like I think I can't remember where I watched it, but someone was saying even just like their two ships were just in perfect unison. So before we even seen them, before they talked, you already saw like Anakin and Obi-Wan, like after all their time together and everything, they're just flying in perfect unison, and they're battling in unison. And then I think the other thing is I think this was on the making of disc, but there was going to be, it was a whole hour longer. That whole intro scene, like from that to the fight of Dooku, was a whole hour longer. And like me, like as a fan, I would love that. You know, I would love a whole other hour of that intro because they just nailed it. Everything about it. I love it. Like, you know, the artwork, the sounds, you know, the space battle to, you know, all the way through the Dooku fight was just spot on.
Yeah, I feel like when it starts, you know, you just see the Star Destroyer and it's just the music, the drums. I love drums. Drums just makes things feel bigger, right? And then when they get around the ship and you see the scale of the battle. And that's what I really enjoy, just that the background, you know, just looking at everything, all the ships there, and it was I remember that being like the coolest thing when I first saw it. Like I was just hooked instantly. Well, of course it was Star Wars, but that was such a great way to start it off.
Yeah, the sound effects are fantastic.
I love
the
that
clang and the loading of the.
Yep.
Yeah.
That little scene where the ships are firing on each other after the Dooku fight. That is it holds up. It looks so good, and the sound, everything in Star Wars, the sound design is always top notch.
Yeah, I love it. I think another thing too that really sort of elevates this movie in hindsight is the Clone Wars animated series. Like having all of that, like if there's anybody out there who is watching or listening to this who has not seen the Clone Wars animated series, it is essential. Like it is absolutely essential, and I think heightens everything, even coming up to this first moment, like you were sort of touching on, Josiah, like the sort of like getting to know Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship and having that kind of like banter even there in the opening, you know, moments. Have you noticed the shields are still up, you know? And having that whole kind of back and forth and kind of ribbing on each other, and all of that is just nothing but heightened from watching the animated series, and it's phenomenal.
You get Obi-Wan's sarcasm a lot in the Clone Wars.
Yes.
Obi-Wan is very sassy, and I love it.
Yeah. I think another thing too is...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, another thing too that I really like, just even in the intro, if we're going to start talking about the sword battle, you know, that we have between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku once again. You know, now this is a lot different than the last time, and like it makes it clear very early on. And I think the other thing is, you know, I think the other thing is like it's not short, but like how short it ends up being. Like I think it just really drives home the point of that Anakin is progressing. Anakin's skill and, you know, his, you know, he went through everything that we just talked about in the Clone Wars, you know, so you can really kind of see that a lot more. And then, you know, the other thing is, when we always talk about this, but the foreshadowing in this is just so spot on, because we have Palpatine again watching basically his current and former apprentice, just like he was watching Vader and Luke, you know, so you can see it's almost exactly, you know, the same. The emotions are hitting the same. But then once again, we got my man Luke makes the right choice. He's like, I'm not going to do it. But then on this, you have Anakin. But I think if you take a step back, once you said about like it being dense, we know Anakin's life and we know Luke's life.
Yes.
Anakin went through so much, like horrible things, and like Luke really didn't, you know? And so, and then I think the other thing is Anakin didn't have, you know, like a father, you know, figure really, you know, all growing up. He wanted one, but he never had one. But then Luke, you know, kind of in a way had two, you know, because he had his uncle, but then he also had Obi-Wan, you know, a little bit in there too, kind of helping guide his decisions and things like that. And so you can kind of see, you know, what they say, nature versus nurture. You know, they both had a very different upbringing, and that I feel like that kind of helped make the difference. But either way, I love the foreshadowing of those two battles And then the other thing is there is the foreshadow within the same movie, because Palpatine says he's too dangerous to be left alive. And then, then Mace Windu at the end uses the exact same logic on him, that he's too dangerous to be left alive. And I
George
think
loves that, man.
Yeah. And it's like, I think you could go really two ways with it. You could either look at it as Anakin kind of felt bad at that moment, like I shouldn't have done that. Well, he did, obviously, and then he took that along to Palpatine, like, I can't, let somebody else, basically be murdered in front of me too. I just did that and that felt wrong. Or, you can kind of look at it as that was kind of that final moment of desperation where he's like, I can't let you kill him because of Padme, obviously. But yeah, that was so good.
One thing I really liked in the intro to that fight, when Count Dooku shows up and he says, "Your swords, please. We don't want to make a mess of things in front of the Chancellor." I like how he calls it a sword, right? Dooku's not a good guy. He's done a lot of bad things, but he's a gentleman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think his character is, his character is, his name is escaping me. The actor,
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee.
Yes, Christopher Lee. Just amazing job for that character. Just such a gentleman, and I just feel like now the way he enters there, does the flip, right? He's got to be cool. He still has force powers. He's an old man, but he can still do flips. But he's a gentleman, and it really came through in his introduction there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love the foreshadowing just in general. George loves foreshadowing. It's like poetry, it rhymes, He loves that stuff. And he plants those little seeds all over the place. And then episode 3 is really when you get to see like the culmination of all of the seeds he's been planting from the original trilogy and kind of like coming full circle into that. And yeah, I do love the way that it mirrors that fight. And I like what you were saying earlier too, Josiah, and I was thinking about this as you were saying it, the differences between Luke's upbringing and Anakin's upbringing, which I hadn't really considered before. But it's sort of like when, and I'm not a parent, but like my parents would say that when I was a kid, I'm the firstborn, I'm the oldest of like 9, and they would be like, "Oh, you were like the practice kid, like we were figuring it out." You know what I mean? Uh-huh. And now like my younger siblings got kind of the more mature, more like wise version of my parents. And it's like that's sort of what happened. Like Anakin was sort of like the practice kid. Like Anakin was the one that got the younger version of Obi-Wan who didn't, who didn't really know what he was doing. And then you get, with the benefit of hindsight, with getting to see like what happened with the Jedi and everything all these years later. And he's now on Tatooine kind of bringing Luke into the fold in episode 4. Like you sort of get to use your wisdom that you've acquired through all of your failures and all of your mistakes and apply that to the next kid, which is Luke, and Luke turns out better for it. I find that really interesting. I'd never really thought about that before you said it.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing I was just thinking about the crawl of this movie, and I just remembered right now I wanted to ask you guys about it because I always thought it was an interesting thing, and over the years it's kind of changed in my mind of what I believe it means. But I kind of want to get your guys' take before I say what I think it is.
I think I know where you're going.
Who do you think the heroes on both sides are?
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured you were gonna say. That's an interesting point. Heroes on both sides. I don't necessarily think that he meant individual characters when he said that. I think he more means that both parties are in the wrong or being manipulated into it's just a conflict and they don't even really know why they're fighting. I mean, go ahead.
I thought you were done. I was gonna I wanted to see what Q thought of this.
I remember reading that when I was watching it, and I have never given that any thought You know, it's kind of weird to say. But I've just never thought twice on that. I'm just like, yeah, it is what it is. But it kind of made, now you ask it, it kind of makes me think of some of the episodes in the Clone Wars where Padme and Ahsoka sneak off to what is essentially the Senate of the Separatists, and you
Mhm.
see the individuals there that aren't necessarily bad people. You know, the Republic for thousands of years has been the one and only government. You know, they haven't had any options, and some of them felt like they were oppressed. And then here comes this movement that, you know, like I said in the crawl of the episode 2, it talks about thousands of systems, and then
Mhm.
Dooku mentions 10,000 more
Yep.
rallying to their cause. It's not like 5 people. It's not like
Yes.
5 worlds. It's a
Mhm.
massive movement that a lot of people think they're trying to get justice for themselves. You know, they're not, and they weren't necessarily. I don't even feel like the Separatists started as wanting to go to war. They just didn't want to be part of the Republic anymore. And
Mhm.
then Palpatine took
Or at
advantage
least
of
that's
that
how
to
they think they
manipulate it.
started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Palpatine took that and manipulated it from both sides into the war that got him control.
Mhm. Yeah. Really good. What do you think, Seth?
I actually I agree with Q. I hadn't really thought twice about it until you just brought it up, and I pulled up the I think it's an interesting line there, but I actually think that it's a line in 2 parts as I'm looking at the crawl here.
Yeah, because
There are
Mhm.
heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere.
yeah, it's the
Mhm.
second part that's
Um,
right there with it. That
yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
because here's the deal, right? We're all heroes, the heroes of our own story,
Mhm.
and we're the
that's
villains
a
in
good
somebody else's story. You
Yeah.
know, like
Mhm.
just like there are heroes on both sides, there's evil on both sides too. You know, I think that really is emblematic of this episode in general. Is like, you know, there's a hero on both sides, depending on, it's all from a certain point of view, of course.
Mhm.
Um, but there's also evil on both sides from a certain point of view.
So
Yeah.
I like that point that you just mentioned, because in this movie, there's a point where Palpatine is talking to Anakin, and he's basically said, "Good is a point of view, Anakin."
Mhm.
Yeah, well, even in the end, he's like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Yes.
You know.
Dang,
Yeah.
you guys are taking everything I wanted to say. I shouldn't have let you guys talk first. No, yeah, I totally, yeah, I agree with that 100%. Because at first, I kind of like, I would say maybe even like a few years ago, I really started thinking about that point, and I kind of in my head or whatever just assumed it meant Dooku. I assumed it
Right.
meant Dooku because, you know, he's a fallen Jedi that once again also gets manipulated by Palpatine, but I don't feel like his initial like leaving the Jedi was an evil thing or a wrong thing. You know, it was he wanted to protect his people, you know, his true people, where he's from and his family and everything like that. And so I think him being the leader of the separatists before Grievous, I feel like, you know, for one, he's very persuasive of a speaker. That's one thing. Very influential. The air about him, like as a person, as an actor, but also like as his
Hmm.
character is just so spot on. Like the swagger he has, you know, like, and I think just even saying about the 10,000 more, I don't even know if he knew he had those in the bag, but he just has the, you know, the swag to be like, I
He
can
can
do
sell it.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
like big time. And so I kind of feel like, you know, all the way, you know, up into this point, like I feel like in his own way, he was the hero. He was the hero for so many systems, and it kind of just makes me think a little bit about like the Thrawn books. I don't know, Seth, if you've read any of those
Yeah.
Thrawn books, but like if you start seeing like, you know, some of like the lower class officers within the Empire and things like that, they're just like Luke. They were on like a small podunk planet that they wanted to travel. They wanted to see the stars, you know, all those types of things. And so then they're told propaganda of what the Empire is and what it means. And maybe for their specific planet, they are giving them protection. They are, you know, helping them so to survive to some extent. So yeah, I think that there's just so much more into that when, yeah, you think about heroes on both sides and evil on both sides. It truly
Right.
is. And I think this movie really played into those emotions. And I think that's why it's so emotional for anyone who really loves Star Wars, who knows these characters. It's so emotional because you see the right and the wrong. And I think this is one of the few movies where I root for the villain. I want the villain to succeed. I want the same things he wants, And so I think that's why I think that crawl was such a it was a hint to something that was so much more deep in the movie.
Yeah, I thought that point was interesting. You brought up when Dooku left the Jedi. He didn't leave the Jedi to be a Sith Lord, to be Palpatine's apprentice. He left to take care of his people.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and when that audio drama Dooku Jedi, I think he might have met Palpatine, but for like 10 minutes, like a quick chat.
Yeah.
He was introduced to him through his old apprentice Rael, and
Mm-hmm.
so it wasn't like they were close. They weren't friends. They weren't working together. He didn't leave the Jedi to go work with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something that eventually Palpatine was able to manipulate that for his own gain. Again, Palpatine being the excellent manipulator.
Yeah. And I think that he saw that, I think if I remember right, and you guys can correct me, you guys might know this a little better than me, but I want to say that it was like Dooku and Qui-Gon, right? I want to say they were like together, and it was kind of like what we brought up before. Yeah. They had like a same mentality, kind of, and once again, why I love Qui-Gon so much is he could see through the hypocrisy. He knew that it was mostly right, but he still wasn't going to go full bore. I'm going to do whatever the council says, no matter what. He still had his own conscience and his own principles he lived by. And I feel like Dooku is the same. And I love that they kind of had that point of having them together. And obviously in the long run, it was bad because Palpatine was able to see their, a little chink in their love for the Jedi Order. But I do kind of correlate the two. And I think that it was good in the last movie where, it kind of made that relationship more believable and strong, that, Qui-Gon, and Dooku, that they have similar minds. They spent that same type of time that like Obi-Wan and Anakin did.
Yeah. I love Qui-Gon really is like that sort of, concept of like the Gray Jedi, the that ultimate representation of like doing what he feels is right, but not being like some, blind arm piece, for the Jedi Council and blindly following them and doing whatever they say. I think Qui-Gon strikes a really good balance there, and in a way, Qui-Gon is the representation of that idea, and Dooku too, to a certain extent. Like nobody wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm a bad dude, like I'm evil, like I'm just, like I'm doing this just for the sake of being evil. Like that isn't an interesting character. They all have motivations, they all have reasons for doing what they're doing, and they're justified from their own perspectives.
Yeah, the Dooku Jedi Lost book kind of goes into that. He mostly leaves from being a Jedi because he thinks he can do better for everyone as the Count of Sereno, not as a Jedi. And so I could almost see him thinking, okay, well, because the Jedi kind of lost their way, and as you mentioned with Qui-Gon, you could think, well, I'd almost say Qui-Gon is not necessarily a gray Jedi, but realizes what the Jedi should really be as more principles instead of strict rules. And so he kind of is that. Well, kind of Dooku in the Dooku Jedi Lost book, he had the same kind of mindset basically, but he took it so far as to leave the Jedi, and so he might still be on that same path, thinking, well, maybe the Sith is the only way to actually bring peace and security throughout the galaxy.
Which is ultimately how it was for Anakin too, right?
Yeah.
Like Anakin was like, these people have gone about everything all wrong. They haven't treated me right, and I'm doing this because I think it's my pathway to saving the people I love.
Yeah.
He's not doing it because he thinks it's like some evil thing and it's time to twist up the curly mustache and be evil all of a sudden. Like he Like he's doing it because he thinks it's what he needs to do to save the people he loves. I mean, he's lost all of these figures in his life. He's lost his mother, and he doesn't want to have that happen again,
Yeah. And I think once again, the foreshadowing comes into play huge throughout his life. Multiple times he's felt the failure of not being enough, not being powerful enough.
Yes.
And so he's like, I'm going to do everything in my power, to make sure that those things never happen again. That and if I have the power to save the ones I love, which is in the end, the only thing he really wants to do. And it's the only thing that his son and daughter want to do too. They want to save the ones that they love. And so I think like kind of all, through their history, it's similar, family means so much to them. And that's why, obviously in the very end, Anakin does, he saves his son, he realizes that is his family. But yeah, I think the other thing in this one too is that he continues to, like, little moments in this movie continue to like stack up against the Jedi Order. And like maybe in those moments it didn't seem big, but we're looking from the outside in, and it's just like compounding of everything bad possibly that could, happen to him happens from the Jedi, and everything good happens from Palpatine. Palpatine tells him nothing but good, obviously, and tells him exactly what he wants to hear, and wants to know. And so I think what you just said, Seth, was great, because basically the conversation with Palpatine was, you're really powerful. I think you're the most powerful Jedi of all, and you can be even more powerful, and you can get a skill that I know, because I know you since a little boy. I know that you want to save Padme. I know your relationship, how much you love her. So I think that there's a way that you can learn this ability or whatever to save her life. And so I think even through the very end, even after the movie, I still think that Anakin thinks that, if you were going to think back, that he was doing it for Padme, even though, looking from the outside in, you're like, man, that was crazy. But I still think like it was just a crazy love for Padme, and it was all the loss that he had just compounding and compounding. And he's like, I can't have that again. So I'm going to do however I need to. And he even says, I'll overthrow Palpatine. So it's his thought wasn't, I'm going to be Palpatine's sidekick, or I'm going to be like this big Sith and just, kill everybody and have, don't care about anybody. His goal was to save people. And, obviously after everything and all the years that he did, he realized that's who he was again, in the very end of his redemption story.
There's a really good scene after he's killed all the separatist leaders, and he's just standing there, but right before Padme approaches, but he's no longer got the yellow eyes again, and you can see him crying, knowing that everything he's done is he knows it's wrong, and he kind of hates himself even. But he's made this choice to try and save Padme. And I kind of also thought it was interesting because I wrote this down in my notes actually, but when he's talking with Yoda, and he's saying that basically Yoda says attachment leads to jealousy. And then he says the shadow of greed, that is. And so that's where, look at what he was so selfish in his attachment to having to have Padme that he was willing to kill every single Jedi, all the separatist leaders, just willing to kill whoever he had to so that he could save that. And that's when it becomes too much. It's a selfishness, not a selflessness.
I think I'll ask this question. Like, I didn't mean to laugh during that part, but I was just thinking this because I wanted to say, I don't know, Seth, are you married?
Yes.
Okay. So we're all married here. And I don't know, but once again, like I already like hinted, to you guys and let everybody know I kind of root for the villain in this movie, because I understand the feelings that he's feeling. First, when you get married, you once again, there is a selflessness that you are caring for somebody else. There's a selfishness that you obviously want to be with them, you want to spend time with them and things like that, but there's also a selflessness that you put them before yourself, right? And then I think the second step is when you have children. Like, all of those crazy love and emotions and stuff that you have for your wife just goes compound when you create another life. And that happened with me when I had my children. And so I think, when it comes to protecting your family, you'll do crazy stuff. And so, I mean, you can obviously say going into like a Jedi temple and killing all the younglings is ever okay. Like that, like Tyler was saying, is too much. But when you kind of see, if you want to call it like a religion of sorts, the Jedi Order has basically betrayed him. Now there's another order, which is the Sith Order, who is doing nothing but saying like that you're great and you're good, and I can help you in all the goals in life that you want to have. It's kind of interesting to think about it, that this is an orphan boy, and then now he's kind of deciding what he's going to do with his life. Which way is he going to go? Is he going to go Jedi way, or is he going to go Sith way? And so like he has those two different entities that are basically pining for his power and his skill and wisdom that he has in the Force. They're pining for him to be on their side. One of them is saying, I'm going to help you with your wife and your unborn child. And the other one is saying, you shouldn't even have that. Like that's why I think, to me personally, this movie just like guts me, because I totally understand having a wife, thinking, even if, my wife was pregnant, like I have a child to think about now besides just my wife. It's like you put him in that crazy situation. It was just, I mean, yeah, it's hard to root against him. It's hard to root against him for me, because he's fighting for his wife, he's fighting for his child, he's fighting to have this happy life that as an orphan slave he's always wanted, and he's finally like at the precipice of having all of the things that he's ever wanted, a beautiful and loving wife and a child, having a family, having power, perhaps being a master, and part of the council, like everything was almost there, and then the rug gets pulled from him.
So I kind of,
You know,
I like this. Sorry, Q. I like this point that you kind of bring out, because I feel like I've said this before, that because George always says Star Wars is for 12-year-olds, and you can kind of see the original trilogy is like how to make the correct decisions in life. And the prequel trilogy is, this is what happens if you don't make the right decisions. Like almost warning, if you go too far, that things aren't going to work out like you think they are. And so that kind of what you said, there's a point where killing younglings is, not okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Q.
I was just gonna to bring up that you keep saying how you were rooting for the villain,
Mhm.
but I think that's the wrong view here. I don't think Anakin's the villain of this movie. I think Anakin is the victim in this story.
Yes.
If you look at Palpatine, he knows a lot about Anakin, right? He knows about what he did to the Sand People. How many people know about that? Padme and Palpatine, probably the only two that know about that. He can touch on that to use to manipulate him. He knows how much he loves Padme. He has, every time Anakin has a problem, Palpatine has the answer. But is Palpatine not the one behind it all, making all these problems? And I was thinking about it while I was watching it. Is it not possible that Palpatine was putting those visions into his head of Padme dying? It might not have been a real thing. It might have been something, somehow Palpatine was manipulating him into seeing those visions. And then, oh, hey, I've got an answer to that problem you have. Come to me. I can save you. You know, you weren't there for your mother. Like, I know about that because Palpatine was, as Anakin said, a mentor to him. As you said, Anakin never had a father figure. Well, Obi-Wan, by this point, had become more of a brother than a father, right? And somebody who you really trust as a mentor, who you're probably going to respect a little bit more than someone you call your brother, right? So this is the person that he has complete faith in and trust, and he has all the answers to all of the problems that Anakin has. And I just feel like Anakin is the victim here. Palpatine has just manipulated him into becoming the villain, but he's really the victim of the story. And Palpatine is completely the villain behind it all.
I would say that
Yeah.
the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy are really not, I wouldn't say the Skywalker saga, I would say the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker.
I think that Anakin is the victim of his life circumstances. But I feel like in this movie is when he finally he makes his own decisions. You know, he basically, he is victimized and manipulated, but I feel like this is finally where he makes his own decisions. This is finally where he decides, I am going to take matters into my own hands, and, why it's so, heart-wrenching is because we know that he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he feels like, it's an ends to a means.
Justified.
Yeah, that there's a justification in all of this. Like, I kind of, if I was gonna say like there's victims here, like I think the victims like Padme. Like
True.
I feel like Padme is probably more like a victim. I think that you could say like Anakin was like victimized and like coming up into this, but I think there comes to a point like maybe it's even the at around the time of the Mace Windu decision, he had to make a very important decision. Is he going to be the hero or is he going to be the villain? Is he going to be the good or is he going to be the evil? And I think he made his choice, when he cut off Mace's hands and then, Mace gently fell to safety.
Okay, so when I was watching that moment last night, when I was ever get to that?
We can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, I lost Tyler.
Okay, we heard you right at the end there.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sorry. I bumped the mic when I... Okay, but anyway, that moment felt like a video game moment where you get that choice. You're at that moment of, do you pick the light or the dark? And it felt... Or you've had that choice in Knights of the Republic and other Star Wars games, Jedi Academy. I love that one, where you get that. There's that moment where this is it. You have to make the choice one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I'm glad Q brought up the point that he did, because something that I was thinking about was like yeah, let's not forget that he was manipulated. Like let's I mean he had all this stuff happen throughout the course of his life. I mean, Anakin is a character who's suffered tremendous loss. Like, to have he grows up as a slave. He's taken out of that by Qui-Gon, loses Qui-Gon, then loses his mother. Then by the time we get to episode 3, let's not forget he's also lost Ahsoka. In that moment, he's estranged from her. And then and then you get to this and it's like, oh, now I'm like risking losing Padme also? No, like this isn't going to happen. And regardless of how Palpatine knew it, if he put the visions in his head or whatever, I think that's totally possible. I like that thought. Regardless of how it happened, though, like, yeah, like those were all the strings that needed to be pulled to get Anakin to do what he needed him to do. And I just, I think he's a really tragic character that has lost so much, and then by the end of that movie, it's like, cool, I've also lost Obi-Wan, and I've also lost Padme. So it's like, at that point, it's like, well, Anakin's gone. Like at that point, it's like I'm no longer me anymore. I've lost what I was fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
Hey, you brought up that part of Padme being gone. Uh, Josiah and I have had some heated conversations over this. What do you think killed Padme, Seth?
I sort of felt like it was just the overall stress of the situation, combined with, like, I mean, there's the physical, like, force choke or whatever was happening there. There's like the physical stress, and she takes a fall in that moment too, and she also, she talks about how Anakin's breaking her heart and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like, she essentially dies in childbirth. And so that's sort of, it sort of seems like it's all of those things combined, especially because, I mean, there are ways to, like, heal you. You couldn't put Padme in, like, a bacta tank. you know I sort of feel like there are ways in there to facilitate some of that, but it also felt like it was pretty quick, like it was kind of an emergency birth situation. Like
Mm-hmm.
they kind of had to get those twins out, quickly, because she had been compromised physically. I mean, when a woman is that far along in her pregnancy, she can't be choked and fall to the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and then, and when you combine that with all the emotional stress that she was undergoing, I think that all kind of compounded into what led to her death.
Mm-hmm.
I think it
So
has.
I
Go ahead.
go ahead, Tyler.
Okay. I was thinking, just all the things she had just endured.
Yeah.
Like you said, the being choked and everything, but and then going into birth and just the pain of birth, and then, but you also have to think, the person she loved. One, I don't know if she fully knows whether he's alive or dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I mean, she says they're still good in him, but she doesn't know necessarily that he's still alive. And the fact that who he turned out to be just completely destroyed, broke her heart completely. And then the stress and pain of birth added on to it. Like, birth is a hard thing to go through for anyone at any time, but then to be that emotionally broken immediately before.
It's all of
Mm-hmm.
it. I mean, she
Yeah.
just learned that the love of her life killed kids. Like, she
Yeah.
just, like, she learned that. That's horrible.
So
Yeah, I think
I've
another. Okay, go ahead. Well, let's let Q go, and then I'll
let
talk.
me share my thought on this. So I've heard this theory. I don't remember where it's from, but it's kind of the theory that I believe that in that moment that Padme's dying, Anakin is undergoing surgery, right? He's dying, and we know that Palpatine said that Plagueis could control metachlorians to basically create or save, alter lives, right? And he also said that Plagueis taught his apprentice everything he knew. So therefore, Palpatine probably knows this skill as well. So I like this theory that Palpatine manipulated the midichlorians so that it killed Padme to save Anakin. Because Anakin's the one he wanted, and he knew that if Padme was still alive, there was a chance that he couldn't control Anakin, right? Because
Right.
that's the attachment. So he has to get rid of her to be able to completely control Anakin. Because once she's out of the picture, like I said earlier, everything that he cared about is gone. So he's no longer Anakin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then and then
he's
when
gone.
and then when Anakin asks what happened to Padme, of course he's not going to tell him, "Oh, I killed her to save your life." He's going to tell him that in your anger, you killed him.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only answer you could give Vader for him not to go on a rampage of killing whatever he's mad at, right? Is the fact that he is responsible for her death.
And
In that moment, he couldn't he wasn't going to kill Palpatine because she died, because Palpatine didn't do it. He killed her himself. At least this is the manipulation that is being told, and that's the theory that I like to go by, and that Palpatine used her life force to save Anakin.
one thing I like about that scene, and it's kind of something that Seth brought out about, and that George has said, like it rhymes like poetry. I view that moment as Padme's death is happening at the exact same time that the true form of Darth Vader is being born. When he's being put together in the suit, he's being reborn into what Darth Vader is. And it coincides the same time that she is dying. So her death seals Vader's fate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Vader is like Palpatine. It's his dog. I mean, we all know the suit is not like the Vader suit basically inhibits his power. Like he's not
Mhm.
even it's not like a great suit. He has him in this like janky suit that is like keeping him away from his full potential because he knows how scary and threatening that is to him. You know, the
Mhm.
fact that Anakin is able to do what he is able to do as Vader despite being, you know, in this suit, he's like in this junk suit essentially, you know. I think is impressive. I like that theory. I'd never heard that theory before, but it made me think of something that came out a couple of years ago, I think. Have you guys ever heard of the Padme help me thing in episode 3?
Mm-mm.
There's this whole thing people have like because
He's
it's Star
mouthing
Wars
it,
and
right?
yes, there's this whole thing where people have like, you know, superimposed the audio and they think they can hear Vader weakly saying Padme help me right before the helmet closes in the end, and you can see his lips moving like right before the helmet closes, and people have tried to like, you know, isolate that audio and you can kind of hear a weak like Padme help me, you know. And
That's chilling.
I it is right, and you can it's hard to hear, but you can kind of he's definitely saying something. He's definitely kind of weakly getting out something, and I do find that if what you're saying, Q, is correct, I think that that makes that even more tragic. You know, that like he was saved by Padme ultimately, and manipulated by Palpatine at the same time, and has to go through life thinking he's the one that did it. You know, that's even worse.
Just Q's point about the victim.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, can I
Yeah,
talk now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, yeah, I disagree with that because if he has the power to kill Padme, who's not even force sensitive, then he should have killed Luke and Leia. You know, like if he had the
Mm,
power to kill someone from, a planet away or however, a city away or wherever they were, it doesn't matter really what the distance is. If he was able to sense a being that's not even force sensitive, so not connected to the force, if he was able to sense them and kill them, then for one, he definitely should have known that there was children that survived and then that there was two of them. And so the more logical thing for him to do would be to kill the children, you know, and kill her and the children either way. But I still feel like that she died from, whether it was the physical, stress or the broken heart. I feel like that's more realistic to the story. And I think another thing is, I think at that point, Palpatine already had him. I don't think that he was, being like, oh man, I hope that I could keep him. At this point, he was already too late. He killed almost all the Jedi. So there isn't really like Anakin could go back and be like, okay, let's start up the whole council again and let's try this again. It was already too late for that. So at that point, I think that Palpatine was legitimately telling him the truth. And in his viewpoint, that's what it was. Palpatine's viewpoint was that whether it's physically or emotionally, he killed Padme. Um, because another thing that he could have done to make it even more, hardcore and manipulation and never to turn back to, the light or the Jedi would have been to say Yoda and Obi-Wan killed her.
yeah. Let me
Because they
float
were all
this to you,
there.
Josiah. Let me float this to you.
Okay.
What if, and again, I'd never even heard this theory before Q said it, but now my gears are spinning. What if Palpatine left them alive as a contingency plan? What if he was like, you know what? If something happens with Vader, if he tries to turn me, if I end up having to kill him, get rid of him, whatever, at least I know there's some other kids out there that have a little bit of that Skywalker stock. You know,
Yeah,
I can go and I can
thought
turn them
about
too.
I think that's a great point, and I've thought about that too. So, but if that was the case, he would have made sure to know exactly where they were, and he would have put them in his own care. He would not
Yeah.
have allowed the Jedi, the remaining Jedi, and the hardcore faithful Jedi, of like, Obi-Wan and Yoda to control these two Skywalkers. He would have made sure to hunt them down and get them and basically raise them himself. And then now we can go a little deeper, and this gets a little more twisted. But if that truly was his thinking, is to have contingency plans because of like the strength, and the force that
Hmm.
Luke and Leia could have had, then why didn't he do the same thing for Rey? I think he
was
could care
trying to.
less.
I think he was trying to.
No, not to leave her alone like that and then let her go the way she did. Nice try. There's no way. He could care less about people. He's only going to take the people that are already powerful and proven powerful, and then he's going to torture them and make them more powerful. That's what
Mhm.
he does, and that's what he did with Dooku, and then later on that's what he did with with Kylo. He doesn't want to take someone that isn't proven. And I think that's why Anakin was so important to him, because he time and time again proved to Palpatine his power before he ever took him on.
I think this theory that Quinton brought up, even if, like you're saying, just that he's not manipulating, he's not draining her life force and giving it to Anakin. The rest of what Quinton said is completely right. He still manipulates him, tells him that you killed her, and so he still has to live with that guilt, regardless of whether it was Palpatine doing it or not. He was still being manipulated yet again. And two, think about this. He's still being manipulated by Palpatine, even though, like you said, he's past the point of no return,
Mm-hmm.
and he's still being manipulated by Palpatine.
And one thing I wanted to bring up, you said that Padme wasn't connected to the Force, but according to Qui-Gon Jinn, where everybody is connected, there's
I was
midichlorians
going
and
to bring that
everyone,
up. Yeah.
maybe not to the point that she's in
Rogue
touch
One.
with the Force, but the
Yeah.
Force is connecting everything, and so maybe he wouldn't have been able to do those things to her if she wasn't already physically and emotionally very weak, right? It could have been just the end of that life force that he couldn't do it to somebody who was full health and alive and well, but she was already physically and emotionally drained and not in a good place, not trying to recover because she was so heartbroken. So I mean, it's really just a theory. There's no obvious answer to it, but it's just the headcanon that I like to think when
It's
I
interesting.
watch the movie.
Yeah, I had not heard that one. I find that interesting, and I think too, if you play the entire tape, like I think that um there's that school of thought that Josiah brought up of like, yeah, he would keep them in his care. Why didn't he do this with Rey and stuff? But it's like, I don't know how much control he really does have over that. If he was able to kind of manipulate the Force, the midichlorians, to transfer life force from Padme to Anakin or whatever the case may be, then it's like maybe in that moment it's like he didn't really have a choice. It's like, because as soon as they're born, it's like, okay, cool, you're gonna go with Bail Organa, you're gonna go in Tatooine. It was like instant. It was like immediate. It was like an emergency departure mission. And so maybe he just literally didn't have the chance to, and they just hit him so well. I mean, who knows? Maybe when
Yeah,
the Obi-Wan series starts up, we get a little bit of a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I also I don't think that he necessarily killed her just to be manipulating to Anakin, but also Anakin was in a bad way, right? He was
Right.
very potentially going to die and needed
Barely
help.
alive. Yeah.
And so if using the Force that way could sustain him long enough for him to recover, could also be a purpose behind it. Not just the manipulation, but also, this is my champion, this is my guard dog, my soldier. I want him and I need him to be alive, right? It was also a need for Palpatine.
Yeah, but I think that if that was the case and he was like trying to like keep him alive, that besides if his own powers still weren't being able to do that, if he didn't really fully learn the power to keep him alive, then he would have said like Padme's alive. And he would have allowed him to believe that she's there and you could be reunited with her and whatever, I have her on this place with the babies and all this stuff. And then as soon as he's up to full health and ready to go, be like, oh, I guess she was killed.
I feel like Palpatine would have offed her at some point anyway, because she basically at that point he thinks he's doing it for the right reasons and being good. But at that point, once she's dead, he can basically just dedicate himself to the dark side and just do bad. There's nothing really holding her back, and she's not going to go along with that. So if he's going to listen to her, she's an enemy.
Yeah,
if he
it's
listens,
I'll say it's a two birds with one stone kind of situation.
Yeah,
and like you said his own power was enough to save him. It's not the way I see it. It's manipulating midichlorians is not creating midichlorians, so they have to come from somewhere, right? They don't just make
Mass.
them; they manipulate them. So,
But
to
you could
save
also
one life,
multiply them.
you does he mention that? And I
Well,
need to pay attention to that line a little more, because I feel like
yeah, I think
manipulating would mean
you can
taking
manipulate
from one
and
to
multiply. Yeah.
manipulate would be to take from one to give to another, is kind of my thought. So it couldn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
It's
because
an
there's also
interesting
talk
theory.
about Vader, since he got all chopped up, that he has less power because he has less blood in his body. And so there's kind of like that logic too. But I don't know. I kind of feel like I don't think the amount of blood, which is where the midichlorians are, basically dictate how much you have. So, like if a Jedi gets a bloody nose, he doesn't lose midichlorian. You know what I mean? Like, so I kind of feel like that it's still the being itself has it.
yeah.
But I think that we have to go into like legends to get deeper into how it all
Yeah.
works. And so it's not even canon anymore. But
Yeah, to point,
Yeah, that's
Seth.
why a lot of
Oh.
these. That's the great thing about Star Wars, is we all have our own head canon,
Our own theories, so many things to dig into. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. There's not nothing is really set in stone. There's just so many ways to think about things, and we all can enjoy it in the way we want to, and we can have these kind of conversations about it.
So one thing I liked is at the end there when they're fighting, because I don't think Obi-Wan really thinks that Anakin is necessarily fully lost until they have that conversation where he says, "My point of view, the Jedi are evil," and that's when Obi-Wan says, "Well, then you are lost."
Right.
And so, and I was just trying to think of it, but shortly after that is the end of the fight where Obi-Wan gets the high ground. I thought I watched this from a new perspective, and it was really interesting. But Obi-Wan kind of goats Anakin into going for it. He says, "It's over. I have the high ground. Don't try it." And he's literally just he's feeding into his pride and his arrogance that gives him an opening to cut him in half, to try to jump over him. He didn't have to try. He could have just landed and walked up to him. He didn't have to jump over him. He could have just walked up to him and continued the fight. But he fed into his arrogance and his pridefulness, thinking, "I'm the most powerful being, maybe other than the Emperor," which actually he says he's more powerful than him. He can overthrow him. He thinks he's the most powerful person in the universe. And so Obi-Wan's like, "Sorry, but you're going to get humbled right now."
Yeah. I was thinking about this today, and I want to float this question to you guys when it relates to the final fight, because I think this is interesting. At that moment when we arrive in that kind of like final confrontation, Mustafar, Anakin already thinks that Obi-Wan is against him. He's with the other Jedi. Like one of the first, he's like, "You've turned Padme against me." You know, if it were Ahsoka there instead, having that conversation with Anakin, would it have gone differently?
Yes.
Could Ahsoka have turned Anakin back and been like, "Dude, I'm with you. The Jedi screwed me over too. I'm with you. I've lost things too." You know, they're very close. If she had come back in and been there for him in that moment, could she have turned him back?
I like that. That's a good thought. I think like Josiah said, yeah, I do believe so, or at least made him ponder it more.
Yeah.
Because I think like when like in the cartoons, when Ahsoka finally sees Vader, you know, like kind of like for the first time or whatever.
In Rebels.
Yeah, in Rebels, you get that feeling. And that was way along his Vader, you know, self. But if you go back before that, yeah, I think that would have changed things huge. And I think kind of to your point there or whatever, I think that was a bad move all the way around. Like Yoda, even if you put Yoda in there, I think it would have went different. You know,
He doesn't trust the Jedi.
Yeah.
He doesn't trust the Jedi. He feels betrayed by those people. Even the person that he thought was his brother is, in his view, manipulating his wife against him, the thing that he's fighting for against him. But if somebody who is completely removed from all of that, from that whole world, somebody like Ahsoka who is like, "No, like I'm with you, dude. I don't disagree with you. I see your point of view and I know why you're doing this, but here's why it's wrong." Like he needed that kind of, every now and then in all of our lives, we need somebody to wake us up. We need somebody to slap us in the face and be like, "No, dude, you're doing something wrong." And like Anakin never got that unless it was from somebody that he already felt betrayed by. You know?
That's true.
Yeah. And like you're talking about with Obi-Wan, he already felt betrayed by Obi-Wan at that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan was the one who gave him that assignment to spy on the Chancellor. And at that moment, right there, he was already like, I'm already losing my trust in Obi-Wan. That's where that started. And I think that whole conversation in the end could have gone differently if somebody else gave Anakin that assignment. Like that was, they had Obi-Wan do it because Obi-Wan was close to him and they knew it was a risky thing to ask. But that really started to turn Anakin against Obi-Wan. And I feel like Obi-Wan really cared about Anakin in this film. You could really see it when they're flying in the gunship, and he says he's never let me down. When when he's about to leave for Utapau, he calls him my old friend, right?
Yes.
Episode 2, he kept saying my young Padawan, right? Kept looking down on him, but here he calls him his old friend. You know, that was a complete respect shown to Anakin there. But at that point, Anakin was already starting to doubt in the Jedi.
I like that.
Even though, no, go ahead.
I like that scene that you're talking about though, when he calls him his old friend, and it makes me think of George's symbolism. So in that scene, that's the last time they communicate before he becomes Darth Vader. And in that scene, Obi-Wan is standing out in the bright sun, in the light, and Anakin is standing in the shadow. And it's just more of the foreshadowing.
In the darkness.
And so that just gives you the chills. It's like that's when they're saying goodbye. And yeah, I just like that part.
Yeah. I feel like I need to ask this question. I was going to ask you guys too, but so with Obi-Wan coming out, I can't remember, somebody tweeted this out and I actually never thought about it. And I don't know why I've never thought about this, but somebody said that Obi-Wan doesn't know that Anakin survived right away. And like, I never thought about it. And so I was like really thinking about it today and I kept going back and forth about, you know, if he could sense it, if he could have felt it, if, you know, the news kind of spread type thing, or, you know, how long, or if he did find out, how long until he knew that Anakin survived, you know, and then did he know immediately that Anakin was Darth Vader?
Yes, he does. He knows that Anakin is Darth Vader because when he looks at the security cam footage in the Jedi Temple, he sees him bow before Palpatine, and Palpatine calls him Lord Vader. So he does know
Yeah, that's
that
true.
he's Vader, and so if he hears reports of the Emperor's hand, Vader killing people, he knows he's alive.
Yeah, I guess
That's
that is
true.
true.
But
I'm going to be really curious to
That's a good point.
see. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Seth.
I was just going to say, I think I'm going to be really curious to see in the Obi-Wan show kind of how, yeah, I was thinking about him in relation to Luke in The Last Jedi. I mean, it's totally possible that Obi-Wan has more or less cut himself off. It's totally possible that Obi-Wan's like, not only do I not want to be detected, I want to sort of remove myself as much as possible from this, not only in hindsight, not only like, what, actually, I have some regret about this whole situation, but also I don't want to be detected. I don't want to, I want to sort of be in exile. The same thing with Yoda, who goes into exile too. That's the thing. There are a lot of people who are like, why did Luke go into exile in The Last Shot? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe because Yoda went into exile, because Obi-Wan went into exile. Like it's not unprecedented. It's not unprecedented. This is something that happens, and these people do kind of cut themselves off from the Force. I'm going to be really interested to see how that show tackles that.
So you kind of.
So I'm gonna counter that just for the idea. I mean, I get where you're going, but the trailer where Obi-Wan is talking about wanting to train Luke, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he's not completely over the Jedi.
The Owen.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
How he burns him, but when I was watching, this is one thing I wanted to bring up. I was watching the movie. There's this part at the end that makes me really excited for the Obi-Wan show, and probably the thing I want to see more than anything is Liam Neeson. If that was something they were able to keep hidden this whole time, and
it's
then
1,000% gonna happen. It's 1,000% gonna happen.
It hasn't. I'm pretty sure Liam Neeson has said he's interested in revisiting that character, right?
So
he's gonna be coy. Yeah,
it's gotta be.
He recently said that he would only do it if he was in a movie, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I've heard rumors that he's already in the show, and that's just him trying to be like,
trying to hide it.
Trying to hide it, play it off.
Well, they don't even have to. They could do what they did with Luke's voice. They could just deep fake it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I was watching. I was like, man, I really hope we get some Qui-Gon Jinn in the Obi-Wan show, and we have to, right? Like,
I think we will.
That is such a big part.
So,
as bad as I want to see Dex, I'm a little more. I'd rather see Qui-Gon Jinn if I had to pick two. If I had to pick one of the two.
So you kind of brought out a good point about the exile, though, because I actually put some notes in there. It's like, why do the Jedi go into exile? So I think really the Clone Wars is where you see the real reason. And people will talk bad about, I think it's the Martell sisters, that arc.
Yeah. Right.
And they say, well, it's a poor arc. And I think that it's actually really good because it really shows you what Palpatine did, because he defeated the Jedi long before he killed them. He turned the whole galaxy against them, because they don't care about us. Those are just generals in a war. They're not actually here to protect us and keepers of the peace. They're fighting a war.
Right.
So he defeated them by destroying their image. And so at that point, basically, even if the Jedi come and try to kill Palpatine again and again and again, everyone's just going to look at him and say, no, you're the bad guys here. So they kind of have to go into hiding and, kind of let that settle. That's just my theory on it.
Yeah, I think that the tough thing for that, I always think the exile thing's kind of funny too, just in general. And, I am somebody who disagrees with Luke going into exile, just because, like we were talking about the Anakin Luke foreshadowing. Luke does the right thing. To me, Luke is the legit hero always. And so I think that was like hard to see. But I think, yeah, just in general about like this whole thing, but then you think of Ahsoka, like we had just brought up. So like, what's Ahsoka doing during this whole time? Ahsoka is going around, in pseudo cover, but still using, to some extent her Jedi abilities to help people. And so like, to me, I feel like that would have been something that they could have done instead of like hiding for 20 years. They could have like been doing similar things, at least trying to help where they could, instead of like, hiding for 20 years and not really having any influence until Luke and Leia are old enough to do anything.
Well, I feel like at first it definitely makes sense to go into hiding, like Obi-Wan's message telling everybody to go into hiding, because they were being hunted, right? By the Clone Wars was over, but there were still all these clones, right? They were hunting Jedi, and it was seriously dangerous to be
It was a
anywhere near a
Holocaust,
Force user.
literally.
Yeah, and so at first it obviously makes sense to go into hiding, and then Obi-Wan, he definitely kind of just goes with this whole nothing but watching over Luke. That's his job for the rest of his life, and that's what he did.
Well, at least that we know of until the show.
Yeah.
Fair.
It's interesting too, because you think about like, like he has a willingness and a want to train Luke as we see in the show, but like that's not what winds up happening. Clearly, like there's a period of like, probably 20 plus years where he's just like, okay, cool, I gotta back off, I gotta keep my distance, I gotta grow old and become Alec Guinness, and I gotta do my thing and like keep away. We don't know how it reaches that point. That's what hopefully the show is going to tap into. But but that is where it winds up going, is he backs off basically until Luke finds him.
Yeah, until he becomes the crazy old guy in the mountains.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy old Ben.
The beginning of a New Hope, he doesn't even know who Obi-Wan is.
Right.
I don't. Have you guys started to read the Brotherhood book yet?
Not yet. I really want to.
Okay.
I'm about. Let's see. I can
There's
look it up.
just
about 5 hours in on the Audible version.
There's an Easter egg. Yeah, I've only got like 2 hours left of it. There's just an Easter egg in it pretty early on, where it basically tells you why he gets the name Ben. And I don't want to spoil it because it's pretty cool, but I just, that's always been a question. Like, why did his name change, right?
Right.
Well, obviously he's hiding, but he didn't change his name that much. So I don't know. It's just cool. It's been a pretty good book so far.
I gotta check it out. I do. It's crazy that we've gone this long without bringing up Order 66.
Yeah.
Which is like one of the most harrowing like scenes I think in film history, in my estimation. Well, especially like when you look at the Clone Wars and the connection to those characters when Order 66 happens, like that's where men cry, dude. Like that's the Plo Koon scene gets me.
Yes,
oh
he was
my God,
favorite, and I hate it every time. I wanted to talk about it at the very beginning of the podcast, but I didn't want to interrupt you, and then we kind of just rolled on because you talking about favorite parts, and you mentioned the music, right? The music,
yes.
And how many Star Wars projects have we had to suffer through that in the past few years with the Clone Wars, with the Bad Batch, with Jedi Fallen Order. And they just keep throwing it down our throats, and we just keep crying every time we hear that music. It's such a memorable music, and it fits. It's so sad, and I'll never forget. I always loved the I can't think of the name, the creature, the giant lizard that Obi-Wan rides, right?
Boga.
And when he gets shot, and that music's playing, and the sound that creature is just screaming, crying, is always in the back of my mind. It's literally there's the sad music playing, the Jedi are being killed, and this just awesome lizard that Obi-Wan has been riding is crying on its way to its death. Like, just that noise, that sound it makes always gets me.
Yeah.
When like Coyote Mundi turns around and he sees like, he has that look of like visible shock and like hurt on his face. Like, oh, it's heartbreaking, dude.
I was like your point, Quinton, because we've seen Order 66 a lot now.
Mhm.
You know, Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah, that game did really well with that.
Yeah, you've seen it so many times, and I'm almost. I mean, we got some of it in Boba Fett
Yeah.
with the Mandalorian episodes, and I kind of have a. I'm going to go on a little speculation here, but Grogu was rescued from the temple during Order 66, right? That's what it
Yeah.
showed in Boba Fett. So,
Mhm.
but who rescued him? Obi-Wan and Yoda while they were there.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Possible.
It could just be a completely different character
It could.
too, somebody that we
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
met. Yeah.
It could be somebody in the Obi-Wan show.
But that's what. Well, that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean. You could see. I think we might be seeing a flashback of them grabbing him from the temple,
Yeah.
which would
Right.
also be great because then we get to see Yoda again too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got to use
Yeah.
Frank Oz.
Oh man.
Yeah.
There's so many
The
things I wanna
potential.
talk about this movie. I was just thinking about R2D2, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's this line where R2D2 beeps at C3PO. It's right before Anakin goes to Mustafar when he's talking to Padme, and R2D2 is beeping at C3PO, and all you hear C3PO say is, "Oh, he's under a lot of stress right now." I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was in a comic or but there's somewhere where it's R2D2 is telling C3PO that Anakin doesn't talk to him anymore, which is
Oh.
heartbreaking, right? Because their
Oh.
relationship is so close, and
Yeah.
it makes me think of this. It's brought up whenever Luke Skywalker tells R2D2 to stay put. R2D2 never listens, right? He always,
Mhm.
not, I'm coming with you, bud. I'm not staying here, and it's because the last time Anakin told him to stay put, Anakin never came back.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in Mustafar, he tells R2 to stay with the ship, and Anakin never comes back. Think about R2D2 is a fantastic character who
Yeah.
cares about people,
Mm-hmm.
and he's sad that Anakin doesn't talk to him anymore. He got abandoned on Mustafar. That's a sad storyline, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars is
that
awesome.
gets me.
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy. He had like some great moments in this movie to shine too. I mean, he hits
Yeah.
that buzz droid, at the beginning. That was like so awesome to see. And then you have
Setting
like
that oil on
the
fire.
oil scene. Yes.
Yes.
Lights it on
The
fire.
theater popped
Oh,
off
man.
when that happened in 2005 or whenever this movie came out. The theater popped off.
Mm-hmm. That was so awesome. But yeah, I think the other thing with Order 66 is I think the Clone Wars cartoons do it really good justice as well of showing that all the clones are individuals.
Yes.
And like
Mhm.
all the high ranking, clones are very close to their generals. They aren't just fighting because they have to, but they're doing it because they respect their Jedi generals. And so I feel like this means so much more. Like Seth that brought up after watching the cartoons, it hits you so much deeper and I think the face, like you were saying, when he turned around, that shock was like, these were his friends. These were people that respected him like beyond like the line of duty. Like they've been through so much together. They got out of so many things together, and yeah, I think so. Every single moment, like seeing these clones that were so close to each one of these Jedi, it just hits you so much deeper. These aren't just, faceless, droids that are, there's a switch hit and they're killing them. These were like actual individual people that they had friendships with.
So
I think that's why it's just so more like, hits you.
So I'll piggyback off of that and kind of go what I said where Palpatine had killed the image of the Jedi. Well, the clones themselves would be really the biggest people in the galaxy that actually know who these Jedi are.
Yeah.
They know who they are as people, and that's where the Jedi see them as individuals and treat them like that. And the clones can see their kindness. So that because really it's shocking to the clones too, even that they're even doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like the biggest betrayal. And just like you said, it kind of gives you chills.
Mhm.
I think it might literally be in the first episode of Clone Wars where Plo Koon goes after his wolf pack and he saves them, and they're like, "But leave us behind. We're clones. We're dispensable." And he says, "Not to me."
Yes.
You know.
I
Yoda
love
does the
that.
same. Yoda does the same. And
Yeah.
I think it's the very first episode.
So yeah, the very first episode is Yoda's episode. I think it's the next
Maybe it's episode
which
2
is
or 3
which is the
then.
very
Yeah.
first arc, the very first story arc is
Mhm.
where Plo Koon has that line.
But Yoda
Yeah.
says in that first episode, he says that in the Force, you're all different. You're all individuals in the Force.
Mhm. Yeah.
The
You know, I like
Clone
that
Wars is
idea how you-
required viewing, man.
Oh yeah, like how Tyler said that the Jedi can view the clones as individuals, but if you think about it, to the galaxy, the Jedi are Jedi. One Jedi, another Jedi, whatever. You know, they're all the same. But the clones have
Right.
that same view of the Jedi. They view the Jedi as individuals, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, the relationship they had being so close together, and then them being the ones that turn on them, you know, out of their control,
Think
is
Kanan.
just
Kanan
Yeah.
Doom.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so chilling, and we can go on. We can go on for hours on this.
I know.
Just Order 66 could be its own podcast.
I know
honestly.
for sure.
that's true. I totally wouldn't mind making that a topic someday. There's so much in there.
Oh yeah, we can definitely deep dive on so many things. That's the cool thing about Star Wars, and especially the more content we get, the more there is to talk about and enjoy and continue. You know, Star Wars continually grows.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if you guys have been looking at chat at all. There's a few things in there. We could go over. Let's see. Jedi Fallen Cloud Gaming Dad said Jedi Fallen Order was awesome. Yes, it was.
Oh, it's
Agreed.
so good.
Very much agreed.
Especially the ending. Oh, I was not expecting it to go there, and it
Neither
delivered.
was I. Yeah.
Okay, so and Connie says to admit when I first watched the Clone Wars that she didn't really like it. So I would say the Clone Wars is almost more if you watch the Clone Wars with this attitude in mind. Think about what George is trying to tell you. The lessons, and that's exactly it, because he puts morals at the beginning of every story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the lesson of this story?
Mhm.
And that's just becomes so much better.
Mhm.
And you also got to get past the idea of it's just a cartoon for kids, right? Well, it's not.
Yeah.
It's totally
No.
expanding this
Yeah.
universe, right? It's just another way, a medium to tell stories. You know, there's
Mhm.
movies, there's books, there's shows. Well, there's cartoons too, and
Mhm.
they do such a good job of expanding the story. The
Yeah.
Clone Wars is, I mean, the thing I like about the Clone Wars is it focuses on so much stuff. It's not just, you know, this group, which I really like in the Rebels, you know, how it focuses on one group for the whole story. But the Clone Wars really fleshes out the whole story between 2 and 3 so well. And you get great moments like that one with Plo Koon. Plo Koon is my favorite non, you know, main character Jedi. He's always has
Totally.
been ever since I don't know if you ever played it, but on the original Xbox, there was an Obi-Wan game which kind of followed him
Yep.
through there was this story mission early on where Plo Koon's with you. Ever since then, he's been my favorite, you know, non-main story Jedi, and
I
he
love
has
Plo Koon.
some, and I believe he's Dave Filoni's favorite Jedi too, and so he has some really great lines in the Clone Wars.
Mhm.
That's that shirt that Tyler was talking about, I think before we started the podcast. The shirt that I got him for his anniversary is that it's the Wolf Pack shirt.
Yeah,
The
man.
logo.
The emblem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Filoni has that tattooed on him too. That wolf pack.
I would not
logo.
be surprised.
It's on
So
his
that
cowboy
makes
hat.
sense. Yeah, with this cowboy hat, you know. And I love Filoni, man.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
there was
He
one
is.
point when I was watching him at a celebration panel. And it was just on YouTube or something, and he was talking about the Clone Wars, and he said that George had to tell him, we can't put Plo Koon in every episode.
Well, what's funny too is like, and you know, being there like when it happened, putting yourself in that place and time, like before the Clone Wars animated series, we had that movie to sort of introduce us to the universe and everything, and everybody like hated it. Everybody was like, "Oh, like what is this? Why does Star Wars look like this? Who's this little annoying Ahsoka character? You know, like what Sky Guy? What are we talking about here? You know?" And
Mhm.
I remember how like vitriolic people were to that movie, but now, you know, looking back in hindsight, now that it's complete, the Clone Wars is like one of my favorite Star Wars anything, and I think
Yeah.
Ahsoka
Yes.
is widely regarded. When you look at how much people hated her when she was first introduced to how much they
Mhm.
love her now, we've seen
Yeah.
like basically her entire life, or at least most
Yeah.
of it. You know,
Mhm.
I think there was
Yeah.
The character development there, they
yes,
were able to take a hated character into one of the most beloved characters through
Yeah.
storytelling. And
Oh, Dave
it's so
Filoni
good.
has such a good point on this. I think they did this on purpose.
Yeah. He said that. They purposely did that.
He said no. She's there interacting with Anakin and Obi-Wan, loved characters, so no one's gonna like her in the first place. So let's make her unlikable,
Mhm.
and then you'll kind of grow up with her through the series, and you'll learn to appreciate her and learn. And it's just like it's excellent. That's exactly how it
Yeah.
happens too. Because
Mhm.
yeah, she is annoying. She is a brat at the beginning. She's trying to tell Rex what to do, and he's like, no. Experience outranks anything.
Mhm. Yeah, they did such a great job with her character, and yeah, now she's one of my favorite characters of all. And I think like what you hit on was really good, that it's one of the few characters we get to go from, you know, from child to adult and see, you know, all the decisions that she made, both right and wrong, you know, and you get to like kind of fall in love with her based on her experience. And then, you know, now that there's like books and stuff too, like I don't know if you read the Ahsoka book. But yeah, that one was so good too. And like
it was
a lot
really
of people
good.
kind of didn't like, you know, I guess like there wasn't enough action, I guess you could say, but I really loved it because it was a deep dive into her. It isn't just like she's experiencing all these crazy experiences of war, but it's like kind of deep diving into her mentality,
Into her
you
head.
know?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
need all action all the time, you know.
Mhm. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, it was just so good. And then her relationship with her lightsabers, and then, you know, like the new ones, and like all of that stuff was just, oh man, that book was just so great. Like a little bit more. And now I can't wait for the show. Yeah, it's going to be so
Yeah,
good.
Right.
I talk about how much I like Rebels. Like it's such a good show. But I think
Yeah.
part of what makes Rebels so good is the amazing characters that make it from the Clone Wars into Rebels. Ahsoka and Rex and Gregor and Wolf. Just they just make it better. Like it's a good story, and then it gets better with these characters that you already know, and especially such important ones like Ahsoka.
And so JD in the chat said that they want to see flashbacks in the Obi-Wan series with Anakin and Ahsoka.
Oh man.
That'd be
That
That'd be
great.
cool.
that
Live
would be
action
oh man,
with
like
Hayden
no matter
Christensen
no matter where they have that, I would love that. If they
Right.
throw that somehow into Obi-Wan, I would freak out.
You know what? I think they might hold off on that because there are reports
Yeah.
that he is in the Ahsoka show too.
Okay, yeah. So to me, that would make more sense, and I would like expect it. But if they throw that in before somewhere, oh
Yeah,
man, that would be
because
crazy.
I really feel like I would expect to see that in the Ahsoka show, because one of the
Mhm.
things that I hope anyway, and this is something that kind of annoyed me a little bit with Book of Boba Fett, is like, let this be an Obi-Wan show. You know what I mean? Like, let this be about Obi-Wan and Anakin. This isn't the Anakin and Ahsoka show. You know,
Yeah.
like as cool as it would
Yeah.
be, like save that for Ahsoka's show where we're telling her story. It makes sense there. I don't necessarily need it here. I want Anakin and Obi-Wan. This is the Obi-Wan show. Give me
I would
Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
But
a
I would
good
also
view.
I would also say though, but what if the flashback was the three of them, because they did a lot of missions, the three of them together.
Sure.
And Obi-Wan had a connection with Ahsoka too. I mean,
Sure.
he basically tells her during the Siege of Mandalore, he contacts her and says, maybe you should try and talk to Anakin.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's such a heartbreaking
so
line.
so he knows that he knows about Ahsoka and Anakin's relationship, but he also has his own relationship with Ahsoka. because they all three kind of share that bond.
Mhm.
Kind of what I had mentioned with Obi-Wan, basically from the Jedi's point of view, being Dooku's grandson. Well, Ahsoka would be Obi-Wan's granddaughter, kind of, if you look at it.
Yeah, if
Mhm.
you think about if Qui-Gon had been alive and Qui-Gon took on Anakin as his apprentice, obviously Obi-Wan still would have been close with that group.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think there was. Okay, looks like Klein mentioned the scene where Yoda is fighting Palpatine. He blocks the Force lightning and then falls.
Mhm.
And that because his nails, she says they make a point of showing his nails scraping as he's trying to hold on.
Yeah.
And then he falls on his back. So I actually like that
I thought
point.
it was interesting that she brought that up. That why didn't she use the Force to catch himself or to control his fall? Because that's the same thing that my wife said when he fell. Why didn't he Force jump or control his fall? And I thought that was interesting that they both got that same idea in that scene.
So I
Yeah.
kind of think, and it almost goes back to Josiah's point of Jedi don't fall or don't die from fall damage.
Yeah.
But I would almost push back on that because obviously, even this point, Yoda's exhausted. You've been using the Force a ton. He just blocked a huge amount of energy in the Force lightning, and a lot of Yoda does is absorb it instead of push back because that's the way of the Jedi.
Mhm.
And so he's exhausted. I would almost say the same moment, Mace Windu. Mace Windu, I think, is dead. I think he should stay
Not even
dead.
close.
I think he should stay dead. I think if he comes back, it should be some kind of flashback and stuff. I just think that moment of when Anakin makes that choice, that's the final, and that's the choice he has to make, and is killing Mace Windu. And Mace Windu is thrown out a window, but you don't know if he's even conscious when he's thrown out that window. He was being
Mm-hmm.
electrocuted.
Yeah, we do know that this is like intense physical exertion. I mean, this is how Luke dies ultimately, is
Mhm.
from exertion and overuse of how much of the Force he's commanding in that moment. Like that's ultimately what killed Luke, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we do know that like you can really overexert yourself with the Force.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, and I think like I kind of said in the chat too, my personal opinion of it, and I think going through now that they have Grogu or whatever, you see a lot of similarities between Yoda and Grogu, and that
Yeah.
they get super exhausted after using the Force. Now as we know that John Favreau, and Filoni are over this. They tie stuff in. They think about this stuff. They live this stuff. So I think that they're making it more like it's that type their species because they're very small for but they have high midichlorian count. So they're able to use a lot of the force compared to how small that their body is. So I kind of feel like they're now moving forward are kind of tying it back in with Yoda, that and it kind of makes sense, besides like him just being old, it's that they can command the force very well for how small they are, but when they do it, it takes a lot more out of them because they're only a couple feet tall. you know and so I kind of feel like it's more like that with Yoda, that it's a tie-in with Grogu, that they can use the force, but at the end it's going to take a lot more out of them, because you don't see that so much with other people that use the
I
force
think
throughout the movies.
I think to your point there, I kind of more think of it as it's the reason it takes such a hit on Yoda is just because he's so old. And the reason why it takes a hit on Grogu is because for his species he's so young. That's why it would be kind of interesting to see the game Eclipse that's supposed to take place earlier. You might be able to get a younger Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
Can see him more
Yeah.
towards his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I think both are probably true. I think you're probably both right. I think that like there probably is something to what Josiah was saying, and I think it's also the age probably also factors in. But I do like. I
Hmm.
mean, judge me by my size, do you? You know, that's like a whole thing. You know, that's like
Mm-hmm.
a huge part of Yoda's character. So I think you're probably right about that. I mean, George is certainly conscious of that, and Filoni is essentially George's apprentice. He's like the closest
Yeah.
thing we have to George
George
still
Jr.
working. Basically, yeah. So
Yeah.
Well, I
It's
think
just
we're,
yeah,
we're, we're big.
they're so mysterious. Like, just
We're
the
big fans
species.
of Filoni in this group.
Yeah.
So.
oh yeah.
I think he's a great guider, and you watch the gallery, the Mandalorian gallery,
Yes.
where I think it's episode 2 where Dave talks about the Phantom Menace, and you just need to sit and listen to that and say, that guy needs to be in charge of everything story-wise Star Wars.
Everything.
He gets Star Wars the way George was writing it. Because a
Yeah.
lot of us, or especially more casual people, don't necessarily pick up on the more nuanced things, and he does. He totally gets it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think
I think
saw,
it. Oh, go ahead.
I saw Deborah Chow, who's doing the Obi-Wan series. She said, "Thank goodness for Dave Filoni, that she could go to him and ask him questions," and basically said he was the keeper of lore.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad that she'll admit that, and that we can kind of go, oh well, this has obviously got some backing from him in the storytelling department, right?
There's also
Mhm.
reports that he was the one that pushed them to go with Vader, to make it a story about
Yeah.
between Obi-Wan and Vader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you get from sitting there for countless meetings with a cowboy hat and your doodles, and you're just listening to George talk the whole time. And next thing you know, when it's time to pass the torch, when George
Mhm.
steps away from it, you hand it to George's apprentice, and that's Filoni, man.
Yeah, and I think that I love the story of getting Mark to come on the movies too. That they knew it had to happen. And they went to his house and everything. Like I just love that they knew the importance of it. That he's like Star Wars royalty, and they knew that they had to get him. And so I think the other person that I just there's been so many good shows throughout the Mandalorian too. I just love Bryce Dallas Howard. She is so good.
Right?
Like I would love to have her have like a bigger role, or to let her to take like
Give her a movie.
give her a movie, give her a standalone project. Man, she was born into it. Like her dad is great too, but man, her just like her episodes are just fire. She does so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're some of the best episodes. What was it, episode 3 of The Mandalorian, season 2? That episode. I love her Apollo 13 Easter eggs too. That was great.
So good. Yep.
Yeah, she grew up around that orbit, man. Like Ron Howard is in that same school of thought with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Like he's in that same orbit, and she grew up around that, and you can tell that influenced her directing style.
Yeah. Well, we had a little bit longer of an episode than normal, and
you got me on the show. It's like,
I know. We knew it was going to be
2 hours.
long. Yeah, we knew it was going to be a long one, but we definitely obviously respect your time. We thank you so much, obviously, for being with us. We're definitely going to have you back because we love hearing your thoughts. And now you're an honorary member of the council with us here. So we're definitely going to talk more. This isn't going to be the last time that we talk. But yeah, maybe you could give a little bit of plug about yourself, where people could find you.
Sure. Yeah. I'm on Twitter at $2 Hero, which is on screen. I do 2 Nintendo podcasts. One is called All In, a Nintendo Podcast, which is a weekly Nintendo variety show that posts every Saturday. My good friend and co-host Eric and I make that show. If you're a Nintendo fan, I think you'll really like it. there's a lot of, kind of facets of being a Nintendo fan that we cover each week, in addition to like the weekly news and stuff. And then Keep Nintendo Weird is kind of my little pet project that I do where, excuse me, it's just me hosting that show, but I bring on a guest who just kind of gush about a weird or underappreciated Nintendo game. So that's kind of my passion project there. And you can find all that stuff. It's at All In Podcast, basically everywhere. And then Keep Nintendo Weird is KNW Podcast, basically everywhere. So that's kind of what I do.
Links are in the description.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Yep. So yeah, everybody definitely go check him out. I've personally viewed your content. I've watched you live on Twitter as well. It's definitely a good time. If you love anything about gaming, especially Nintendo, it's definitely he has a good community there as well.
Thanks,
that
man.
has some excellent discourse. So yeah, definitely follow him and give him some love.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it. Do y'all have a couple minutes for a little show and tell here at the end?
Yeah,
Do
sure.
y'all have a couple
Yes,
minutes?
we do.
I was
All right,
actually just thinking about that because you didn't get to do that when we were doing the little interview.
No worries. Yeah, I thought maybe some folks in the audience would get a kick out of this. I thought maybe you guys get a kick out of this. I posted this in the Discord, but considering like all of the Dex love last week, I just had to bring him onto the show this week. Dexter Jetster himself, the greatest love story ever told in the history of Star Wars. we had to bring him out. This is one of those
put him
old
full
school
screen,
figures.
Tyler.
Oh,
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Good old
look at that
Dex.
beautiful man.
That
Look
was
at him.
fantastic.
Look at him, man. So I thought people might get a kick out of that. I also have. So I went to Star Wars Celebration in my native land of Chicago a couple years ago, and I thought people might kind of enjoy seeing some of my goodies from that. First thing I have here is a double signed. Let me try to get this in the frame. This Darth Maul print. It's double signed by Ray Park and Sam Witwer.
Oh,
So in the
Man.
top corner there, you got Ray Park, and in the bottom corner, you got Sam Witwer. So I love
that's
that.
awesome.
I've got this is like one of my pride and joys in my collection. I got to meet Ahmed Best, Jar Jar Binks himself, at Star Wars Celebration, and I got him to sign this print. And I don't know if y'all can read it because there's glare, but it says Jar Jar is the key to all this.
Oh man.
Which
That's
is
great.
a quote from the behind the scenes. George is like, Jar Jar is the key to all this.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I got that. I got, speaking of Clone Wars, I had to bust this out for the Obi-Wan chat,
Oh,
signed by James
Ooh.
Arnold Taylor.
that's
This
great.
cool. Yeah, this cool Obi-Wan print signed by James Arnold Taylor, who I got, by the way, to secretly confirm to me when I met him that they were making another Ratchet and Clank game before they announced it, but I couldn't tell anybody.
Nice.
I got this, obviously, Twin Sons print, which is signed by
That is
Sam
amazing.
Witwer and Steven Stanton, who did the voice of
Oh.
Obi-Wan in that episode.
Man, that is
so-
awesome. I am
which
always
is-
trying to, he gives those giveaways on Twitter
Yes.
all the time. Oh man, I always enter. One of these days I'm gonna win. Oh man, I love Steven Stanton.
One of my favorite moments just in Star Wars history. This one is my pride and joy. Huge Boba Fett print that is signed by, right now, Daniel Logan. Let me try to get this more in frame without the glare of my camera. Daniel Logan and Jeremy Bulloch, the original Boba Fett there, who sadly passed on, and then Daniel Logan there. When I met Daniel, he was like, "Where do you want me to sign this?" I'm like, "Dude, anywhere." He's like, "Well, that's my gun. I'm claiming that gun." So he signed it right
That's
over the
awesome.
blaster. And now I'm just missing Tim Morrison. I was supposed to meet him at Celebration, but I'm missing that. And then as soon as I get a chance to meet Tim, I will have the holy trinity of Boba Fett complete on that print. So
Man,
I
that is
had
so
a few
awesome.
things. I thought people might get a kick
That's
out of that.
awesome. That's great
Yeah.
stuff.
I love that. And it was kind of funny. We were actually just talking about Jar Jar too. And it is kind of funny.
Yeah, man.
As much hate that he gets, he is such an integral part of everything that happens. And we were just talking about it because we were saying, what happened to Jar Jar? There's no reason for
Yeah.
Jar Jar to die. If anything, he helped Palpatine come to power. So whatever, you know, when they're reorganized and everything, he had to keep all these people in proper positions to be organized and everything. So Jar Jar, you know, after the death of Padme, basically takes power, you know. So I was like, what is he doing? You know, like, are
You
we ever
flash
gonna
cut.
find out? You know,
You flash
Or-
cut to a seedy bar, and Jar Jar is sitting there as a disgraced war criminal and is in hiding. And everybody's saying he's the one. He has been publicly ousted as the one who brought Chancellor Palpatine into power and had control of the Senate, brought upon everything that led to mass genocide across the galaxy. Jar Jar is a shamed figure, and now he has to have his own show, his own redemption arc
yeah,
that would not only redeem him in the eyes of the galaxy, but would redeem him in the eyes of the fans. Just like the
Yeah.
totally awesome grizzled Jar Jar.
uh-huh.
Oh, make me so
And
happy.
he's like as big as like the ruler of the Gungans.
Yeah,
He's like all
Boss
fat now, and
Nos.
he's
Nothing
So
would
I
make
don't-
me happier.
I don't know if you guys know this, but his character actually has a canon story to how it ends for him.
oh really?
Oh my
Uh,
goodness, I did not know this.
I think it's the
Yeah,
Aftermath
it's
books,
in
isn't it?
it's in the Aftermath books. Yep.
Oh,
And they basically used that to kill him off in a way. So basically his story is he's basically a homeless man on Naboo, and all he does all day is he's a clown, a performer that he just tries to make orphans smile. Basically, is the rest of
Oh
I
his
like
life.
my
my
idea better.
goodness.
I like my
yeah,
idea better.
yeah. Take that out of canon. Take that out of canon. We
I
need a
think-
better story.
But it's really kind of sad. I feel like they really did him dirty there.
I think those books though were like Seth had said, kind of written around the same time The Force Awakens was, when their attitude was like, oh, no one likes the prequels.
oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah,
And so
for
I think
sure.
and I could easily see them retconning that kind of thing.
Yeah, remember back in the day when there was the concept of G canon? Like you had some things that were like whatever, and then there was G canon where it's like, no, this is stamped, this is Bible. Like
Mhm.
it'd be kind of cool to see that again, like some kind of like officially sanctioned, you know, this is canon and this is not. You know?
Well,
Yeah.
I think George kind of had the idea of, well, you guys can write whatever you want. Nothing's technically canon unless I say it.
Right.
Unless I
exactly.
put it in a movie, that's canon.
Yeah. But even like the Force Unleashed though, he's like, okay, cool. Like this is G canon, you know, like stuff
Mhm.
like that. Like where George, you know, kind of puts his stamp of approval on it. I wish there was something like that where it's like, okay, no, that's not what happened with Jar Jar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I think the other thing is, you know, now with Filoni, he is drawing from a lot of that like borderline canon or not canon, and even like legends, you know, and bringing it into canon. And I love that because, you know, true Star Wars fans, or, you know, people that are super passionate about Star Wars, let's say, that read all those, you know, like legends and the, you know, the different comics and things like that aren't per se canon, and then they get drawn into a cartoon or a live action series or a movie. That just, I mean, that the hype for that, like a fan like that, to see one of their characters that they loved in something that wasn't canon per se, is just so great. And I love that like Filoni is like into that. You know, that's something that he's passionate about, bringing other, you know, things that aren't canon per se, but bringing it into canon.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Hashtag justice for Jar Jar. That's right. In the
Yeah,
chat there, hashtag justice for Jar Jar.
That is actually going to be a thing. Like I'm not
Let's
I'm
make
not
it a
the
thing.
hugest Jar Jar fan, but finding out that's the way that supposedly canon, no, like I can't have that.
Dude, that's
You
horrible.
gotta have a little
That's
bit
horrible.
better arc than that.
Uh,
Oh man.
all right, well, this has been fun.
Such a blast, guys. Thank you guys
yeah,
again
it was
for having
such
me.
a good time.
Yes, sir. It was fantastic.
So yeah, I mean, everyone's Twitter's on the screens. Also, you can find them in the description. It'll take you to the direct link if you want to follow any of us, and the main channel there. Also, check out the Discord channel there. You can even post some questions in the Discord. We might answer on the show.
Mhm.
Also, Tyler, don't forget to play the exit this time.
I remember. All right, you guys. Anything else you guys want to mention?
No, I think that's it. I would just like to say once again, thank you, Seth, so much for being on.
Yes, thank you.
I've been a friend to
thank
you
you.
for a while now. You're such a great and genuine guy, so I appreciate you coming on. We've had such a blast.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I can't wait to come back. It was an absolute blast. I have never gotten to just like come off the leash about Star Wars, man. Animals out of the cage, dude. I'm excited to come back. You guys are doing great work. Anybody out there watching, listening, and if you guys have not followed these folks yet, like I was floored when I saw that you guys weren't at 100 subs yet on YouTube. I'm like, really? Come on, guys. Y'all are slacking out there. Sub to these guys, follow them, and support what they're doing, because like to have this sort of just unfiltered, Star Wars passion love fest every week, to just get to break this stuff down and talk about it. And being able to like disagree and have civil discourse and get to bounce ideas off of each other. That's what this is all about, dude. You guys are really tapping into something special here.
Thank you very much.
We try to keep it positive, but yeah,
Yes.
there are definite disagreements.
I love it. I love it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me be a part of it. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, guys.